Hello and welcome to Kick Unhealthy Relationships to the Curb. My name is Stephanie McPhail. I'm the toxic relationship recovery expert. And my co host, Steve Vaccaro, is not going to be on today. He actually is attending a wake for a dear friend of ours, mother who recently just passed away. So, our condolences out to Grace and her family as she deals with the loss of her mother. However, I will say that it's interesting that Steve is not able to come on today because today is the first day of National Women's Month. And of course, National Women's Month is, some people might say, well, why is that important? And, as much as we have made a big shift in women's rights, and there is much more women are getting much more higher levels when it comes to CEOs and top 500 Fortune 500 companies. We still have a long way to go. So if you have never been interested in National Women's History Month, I definitely recommend you getting a little bit more information, really celebrating some of women's history and what we have done in the sciences and maths, and really what we have done to get us and to move the country forward. On the 8th, which will be next week, we will actually be celebrating International Women's Day, which I think is actually really cool because of the fact that International Women's Day is celebrated by the whole world. And their focus this year is actually violence towards women in a digital age. And there's a little bit more to it, but that's the big piece that they're focusing on. So the fact that we are toxic relationship, this is Kick Unhealthy Relationships to the Curb. Obviously, there is a bigger picture going on with violence towards women still in 2023 that we are still dealing with it. And of course, the fact that when we talk about digital media, how much more actually that is affecting women. Women are still getting stalked. They're getting threatened. All these different things are happening specifically on digital media. And so the big conversation next week is going to be, how do we change those numbers and make it and turn it around? So hopefully you'll be able to make it live next week for International Women's Day. So today I'm pretty excited. We have a wonderful guest today, Monika. Monika is she's a fabulous guest. I got so excited when I was talking to her. Basically, if she was going to sum up what she was going to do, she helps women regain confidence in all stages of life. Aging can be a challenging time, both physically and emotionally, particularly if they have not adapted healthy habits or positive mindset to embrace the process. Monika is she's a fitness fanatic, lover of nature, and a passion for understanding the human mind and body. I always knew I wanted to impact lives since I was in high school. I just never figured out how until my 40s, after years of battling low self-confidence, poor body image, never feeling enough, pretty, skinny, fit, accomplished. You get the picture. Since turning 50, I think I finally have it figured out. You'll often find me on a mountain hiking, a beach walking, or a forest running while contemplating life's journey. So let's take a second and watch a video with Monika sharing some of the things that she does to help clients.
If I had a dime for every single time that I covered my body up because I thought I was too fat or out of shape, I would be a multi-millionaire by now. This is the confessions of somebody who's been in the fitness and wellness industry her entire life. And as I got closer to midlife, I realized I have been wasting so much time being so concerned over things that other people don't even care about. And as we hit midlife, it is normal for us to change. It is normal for our bodies to gain weight. And what I see with so many women is that we start to cover our bodies up even more. And you know what this does? It steals from your happiness. It doesn't matter if you have a few extra pounds. Go to the beach and enjoy yourself. There's nothing wrong with wanting to better your health or maybe to lose the hormone belly fat or the weight gain. But please, don't sacrifice your happiness because you're afraid to show people who you are. You're still beautiful.
That was wonderful. Monika, Diane, come on out and say hello. We are so excited to have you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
As I'm listening to that, I was thinking about a few weeks ago, I went to a women's sip and stroll, which is kind of cool here in Texas. They actually have a opportunity for women to get together, and all of the shops offer free wine at their shop. So you go shopping and drink wine, which I was like, that is such a smart marketing tool. But anyway, so I was there and I remember stopping at a store and I said, oh, that dress is super cute, but I really, I can't wear that type of dress or something like that. And my sister and her friend were there and they said, well, why can't you wear that kind of dress? And I'm like, oh, I just feel really bloated and it's just not, it's, I just don't think I can wear it. And so I'm bringing that up because of what you said there in the thing or the intro. And I was thinking about how often we say that to ourselves. And what my sister and her friend said, they're like, okay, you need to stop wearing those frumpy clothes because it makes you look heavier and start showing off your body. And I'm like, really? That's what should I do? But I think that so many of us get stuck in this negative concept, like, a few pounds more is not like you now need to, cover yourself with a big sheet, like, why are we doing this to yourselves? Why do you think women get sucked into this, that we are so attached to how we look and that being who we are as a person?
That is a big topic, but if I can just sum it up in a couple of points. Well, it literally starts from when we're small, right? All of our little fantasy, idols that we see, Cinderella, Snow White, they all look a certain way, right? And as we get older, we start to watch movies, we get into magazines, and people look a certain way. And I know probably when you grew up and I grew up, there weren't a lot of larger models. And, it was always something that was focused on really skinny, big boobs, flat stomach, all of that. And so I think on a really subconscious level, that is where it starts. And then, we get into high school and makeup. And again, all of these companies are marketing towards a certain look. And the thing that bothers me the most when it comes to any type of self-deprecating thoughts is that these are learned. This is a learned thing. So if we would focus on who we are as people, as opposed to what we look like on the outside, I think the majority of people would be much happier. Our self-confidence, our self-esteem, and our self-worth would be much more elevated. And we wouldn't have the problems that we have today in society. And, all of these self-deprecating thoughts, they lead down a path that it can be absolutely terrible. It can lead to depression. It can be, the trigger point for disordered eating and plastic surgery and abusive relationships, because you lose boundaries for yourself. You lose boundaries because you don't believe that you're worthy enough because I look this way. And so you just kind of accept all of these things. So it's a really huge topic, a really big rabbit hole that you can go down in any number of holes, right?
So, I mean, looking at you, here I am looking you on screen and I just see like this gorgeous, beautiful woman that shouldn't have any of these things going on, because you're gorgeous, you're blonde, you're all the things that like society says that we should look like, in my opinion. And it's amazing to me, and I'm always interested whenever people, someone that looks like you, and even myself at times, where people are like, why is it that we feel so negatively about ourselves? How is it that someone like you got sucked into these types of negative thought patterns, and how have you been able to get yourself out of it?
Woo. Well, I think, again, it starts from when we're really young. My dad is really lovely. And my mom is an amazing mom. I was really lucky to have parents that are still together and everything's functioning and lovely. But looking back on it, they were just trying their best. And unfortunately, their best wasn't maybe necessarily what a child would need in order to develop a really good, strong sense of self. I don't think either of my parents had a strong sense of self. And so in my upbringing, I wasn't really encouraged to, be proud or to stop looking at the exterior things. And it did lead me into an eating disorder of bulimia. And as I went through high school, I didn't develop like the other girls did. So I became super insecure and I ended up having plastic surgery. I had breast implants when I was 23. And then of course I ended up in many abusive relationships, physically, mentally, emotionally, you name it. And you and I had a really good discussion about this before. And so coming out of it, on the other end, my late 40s, when I had my breast implants removed because I got very sick over 27 years, it really forced me to take a look at myself. I was still attached to that identity. And I realized that I actually had no self-worth. My identity was still attached to how I looked. And that is where the work started to happen. And I think, it's funny that you should say that, somebody that looks like me, but I look at other women like that too, right? It's like, wow, you must not have any problems. But here is what I've learned. Every woman has a problem. Every woman is struggling in some way. And what I've also found is that women who are really made up and, they've got all the eyelashes and all that kind of stuff, nothing against it, they're beautiful, but it's usually women that are really trying hard that are the most damaged. It's the beautiful models of the world that are really struggling because they are relying on their looks so much for their validation, for their self-confidence and their self-worth. And as you enter into midlife, that's a whole other ballgame because you tend to lose some of that, right? The hair gets gray and then you're battling with that and the wrinkles start and the weight gain happens and the depression and all of that. And all of a sudden, you look in the mirror and you're not your youthful self anymore. And that adds a whole other layer of self-deprecating thoughts that can happen on a daily basis because your core essence, the core being of who you are, wasn't developed. We don't love ourselves. This is going to change. The body is going to change. So can we maneuver that so that we don't go down the rabbit hole and beat ourselves up and not live life fully and cover ourselves up, just like you were thinking of doing with your clothing shopping the other day, right? Normal process.
I think that some of the worst relationships, the worst times in my life where, I also grew up that you had to make sure that you looked good and like your outward appearance was so important. And you're right. I don't necessarily think that our parents did that. It wasn't malicious. That's what they learned that they were, teaching us. But, if I didn't fit a certain ideal for myself, then I didn't think I was enough. And I look back at pictures of when I looked my best, where I look back and I'm like, wow, like I looked really awesome. I was in the worst relationships ever. Yeah. The one thing that I could control was how much I went to the gym, how much I ate, the exercise, all of that stuff. That's what I could control. And when everything else was out of control, that was something that I could handle, that I could take care of. And there was definitely a part of me. So it was definitely part of that. But it was also, well, maybe they're being mean to me. Maybe they're being hurtful to me because I don't look so good, because I didn't feel good about myself. And so maybe I need to work harder. Maybe I need to look better. And I think sometimes those things kind of follow you, is that, if I just look a certain way, I will be accepted. I will be wanted. I will be needed. Have you found that, like with either yourself or with clients, that that's kind of followed them?
With myself and with clients, 100%. And I completely relate to everything you said about being able to control at least this, right? And that is the problem. It's that we, in order for us to feel secure, we feel like we need to control something, right? And for a woman, it's often our body. For a man, it's maybe their job or their income or their woman, right? But for a woman, it is typically our body. And that is where we get into trouble because, again, things change. And again, if you aren't looking a certain way, you don't place boundaries around, how you're being treated by other people, whether it's relationships or friends or a boss, because subconsciously you don't feel like you can, right? So, and I think I explained this to you a little while ago that, my recent relationship breakup, I was with somebody who had some challenges, and, I was always trying to compensate for them. And my body was the thing that I was constantly focused on. It's like, well, if I can look good enough, right, then, they won't leave me. And the reality is that I wasn't the broken person. And that's something that women really need to focus on, is that we're not broken. It doesn't matter if you gain 5, 10, 20 pounds, you're perfect the way you are. And the most important thing about a woman or a man is here and here. Right? We focus too much on the exterior, and the exterior focus gets us into a lot of trouble. And, for the paramount reason is that it's shallow. There's no depth to it. And our physical look doesn't have anything to do with our personality, right? Our personality or our goals or our dreams or relationships or communication skills or anything.
I wonder how much, or how badly I should say, because I know it's happening, is social media negatively affecting the next generations with all the filters and all the fake stuff that you can add to it. How do you think that people can kind of remove themselves from that type of like unrealistic expectation?
Well, you know what? That is actually something that I talk to my clients about all the time because, often women will say, I feel so ugly. I don't feel youthful anymore. And, all these women look so perfect and that. It's like, well, we can't avoid seeing it. It's out there. I mean, I'm on Instagram. That's my biggest platform besides my blog. And I, constantly, every time I go to post, I'm always seeing stuff. And it's typically, well, it's women of all ages, right? But women that are over 40 and 50, they're always using a filter. They've always got, everything done and all of that. And it can be very intimidating because even I look at it and say, wow, like, geez, she looks really good. But what I do tell my clients is, here's the simplest trick: unfollow. Then you no longer have to subject yourself to seeing these things. And that is the way we have to do it nowadays because we can't unsee things. We can't not see them. So unfollow things that make you feel uncomfortable and start following things that make you feel comfortable. And
yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I just wanted to touch on too that, the whole, hashtag body positivity, self-love, all of that, there's another spin that I think is very unhealthy as well. So what we were talking about before about we should love our bodies, doesn't matter the size. While I agree with that 100%, I don't agree that we should be promoting obesity as body positivity. There is a big difference between loving your body, between all the different stages in life. And if you've gained a lot of weight, love yourself as you get healthy. But in my books and in any fitness professional's books, being obese is not healthy. So I think body positivity, again, we need to really understand that that just means you are loving yourself at all different stages, but being healthy or unhealthy, I don't think belongs in that whole body positivity thing. That's a really big bone that I have to pick with that whole thing.
Yeah. I actually 100% agree with you. And I think a lot of people, it becomes a really weird territory for people to talk about that because, we are in a time where Americans are heavier than they've ever been before. Morbid obesity has skyrocketed in the past 30 years. And obviously obesity causes death and many health issues. So, I think people are afraid to talk about it and say, love yourself. But I think also loving yourself means loving yourself to take care of yourself.
Yes.
That also means you can't, I actually did an activity with some of my clients the other day, and I asked them to list 5 things that they loved about their body. And every single one of my clients said that was the hardest question that I gave them. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, let's talk about that for a second. And so we've got all sorts of varying ages there, and they can't name one thing that they love about their body. They're doing all of the things that you're talking about of like, poking at all of the negative things that they feel about themselves. And I think that's a big issue for a lot of us is that, we're not, it's almost like we're self-sabotaging or hurting ourselves more because I don't like how I look. So I'm going to sabotage myself by eating more ice cream, or I'm going to go for that more snack, or, whatever. Where instead of saying, hey, look at you, look at what your body can do. Isn't it amazing? Look at all the things that when you feel healthy and feel good that you're capable of doing, and then doing all of those things instead of, and loving yourself for doing it. I think a lot of people are focusing on, I'm not enough, so let me just add to it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Agree with you. Yeah. And then as you get older, of course, that adds a whole other layer because now your face changes and the body changes even more. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I think that it really comes down to loving you. So no matter what phase you're in your life is that, you can't do all the great things in life if you're not taking care of this.
Yeah.
The soul needs something to walk around in, and it's not going to walk around without a body. So then we've got problems. So we got to be appreciative of this. How do you get, is that something that you talk about with clients? Like, how do you get people to really reconnect? Because for me, I talk about yoga and meditation and things like that. I'm not sure if you have some other suggestions to really reconnect the brain, the mind, body, put it all back together to make us feel like we're more connected to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest tools that I like clients to use is getting into nature. Leave the phone at home and just be with yourself in nature where there's no outside sounds, and I know it's not easy for a lot of like big city dwellers, New York City or Vancouver. But if you get into nature or even into a park and just really try and focus on your breath and listening to nature, something we used to do as kids, lying under a tree, looking up at the sky, watching the bees buzz around the birds, right? You know how peaceful that was and calm, and you're just allowed to sort of dream, and you're very aware of everything around you, including your body. And that's something that I think adults need to do more often, is just do the things that we would do as kids to really help ourselves connect to our body. And so that is something that I'm a big fan of, is telling people to get into nature. Now, of course, there's so many different levels of clients as to, a lot of people come from trauma, which is why they're not connecting to themselves. So there's a lot of different things that I do incorporate into how to get somebody to start connecting to themselves and starting to love themselves. But nature is a really good place to start because, number one, it doesn't cost anything. It's easy to do. And you always have benefit. No matter what stage in life you're at, you're going to have benefit coming out of that forest or that park.
Yeah. And I love nature. I love being outdoors. That's one of my favorite activities as well. And I think that reconnection is so important.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to someone who is currently struggling, where they're just really feeling, maybe really feeling stuck? Maybe they're wondering like, I'm getting older. I'm not comfortable in who I am, or, whatever those negative thoughts that are coming up. What would you say to someone who's currently struggling?
Number one, cry. Sit down, feel all the feelings. Literally sit there and think about everything that is bothering you, and let it all out. Crying is so underrated. We need to cry. The second thing is once you finish crying, and it may take you days, it literally may take you days of starting and stopping. I want you to sit down and write down all of the things that you think are wrong with you. And then beside that, I want you to put down, when did this thought happen? At what stage in your life did it happen? Did it happen when you were a teenager? Did it start when you were younger? And can you remember a particular traumatic event, or even if it wasn't traumatic, but just something that was said to you? For example, I became really insecure about my chest when I was 14 years old. Was at the beach with a bunch of kids from high school. One of the boys was chubby, and he was laying beside me, and he turned over and he said, "My boobs are bigger than yours." And that was all it took for me to become obsessed with the fact that my boobs were small. And I ended up getting breast implants. So we always can look back at a trigger and what has happened. So once you write out that list, and you say, well, gosh, I started feeling that way when I left my second marriage or my first marriage, or when I was in high school. Then if you can remember a time, and then really think about that. Was that worthy of all of the pain and anguish that you have given it up to this point in your life? Was it worthy of me to be stuck on focusing on my small boobs from a 15-year-old boy, right? Who was chubby,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and then that can help some of the healing process. Now, sometimes there is some really big trauma that happens that, of course, we're going to have to send people to, therapists that are maybe more qualified to work with somebody, such as physical abuse or, those kinds of things. So, but that is what I start with. And then we unpack it. It's like, okay, let's create a new story around that, so that you can move forward. And that's kind of how I deal with some of those issues with my clients.
That's awesome. I love that. This is Kick on Healthy Relationships to the Curb. I am your host, Stephanie McPhail. This is Monika on with me. Monika, what are some ways that people could follow you, or how can they get a hold of you if they are feeling, if they're resonating with you? And you know, and again, anyone who's watching this right now, you know, if there's anything you feel like, hey, I'm calling here, it's really important. We don't do these things out on our own. There are people available to you to help you. And so if what Monika is sharing is resonating, then please follow what she asks you to do. Reach out to her, follow her on social media, and get that support. You don't have to figure it out on your own.
Absolutely agree with you. So the best way for people to contact.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say the best way for people to contact me is really through my blog or on Instagram. Those are the two places that I am on the most. TikTok, I honestly have no idea what I'm doing.
Me neither. I get it.
And I'm not really sure I want to know.
Yeah, TikTok's been forced. I feel like I've been forced to be on TikTok. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll make a reel or whatever they're called.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Yeah. So true.
So if you were going to share, we've got a limited time left, but if you were going to share one thing that you would really like to leave the audience with, what's something you'd like to share with them?
You actually just posted it, one of those quotes. Our self-worth is dependent on our self-love. So if you, if you're finding that you don't have boundaries and you're allowing things to happen in your life that aren't serving you, you're feeling, relationships that you're allowing people to walk all over you, whether it's friendships, your family, love relationships, even a boss, it comes back to the point that you don't have boundaries, and you don't have boundaries because you don't have self-love. And if you don't have self-love, you can't have your self-worth. So they're all intrinsically tied. So I really want you to think about how much do you love yourself and practice it. This whole hashtag self-love, it is so much deeper than that. What we need to do is do daily practices, things like journaling, taking time into nature. Becoming healthy is a huge thing. That's self-love right there. Your body is carrying you, like you were saying. Love it. Exercise, get into nature, have good relationships. If you struggle with trusting people in your relationships, find one friend to really vent with and allow that trust to begin. And then you'll start to love yourself more. So self-love is everything. It's everything.
Agreed. Thank you so much. That went so quickly. We're going to have you on again when Steve is around. But I really appreciate you coming on, sharing all of your beautiful knowledge. Again, for those of you that this resonated for you, please make sure that you were reaching out to Monika. Use her social medias, use what's available to you for you to reach out to her, get some support. Don't try to figure this out on your own. And remember that you deserve way more than what you've been given or what you've been giving yourself, probably as of lately, or maybe for a really long time. So reach out there. You deserve to step into your full power. And thank you again for coming on. This is Women's History Month. So we will be having some other wonderful guests. Please come on next week and come share our new guests that we'll be having for the rest of the month. And make sure that you tune in next week. Have a great week, everyone. Bye.
Great. Thank you.